Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Porter's Product Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Porter, and today we have a really special guest, Weston Lander. He has an incredible background here, having worked at Google, Microsoft, and Bain. And he holds an MBA from University of Michigan, as well as a bachelor's degree from University of Colorado. Wes, it's really fantastic to have you here today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Josh. Excited to be a part of the pod.
Absolutely. Well, today we're going to be talking about collaborating with our product teams. It's a vital piece of the product marketing puzzle. So let's kick off with the most fundamental question. How do you establish strong relationships with the product team to ensure that collaboration is effective and it's aligned?
Yeah, I think that when you think about all of the different roles of product marketing, one of the most essential really is getting good information from your product teams and having not just getting good information from them, but actually having a good two-way relationship with your product team. I think it's important to always remember that you're going to have data and insights into the market that they might be lacking. And it's important that you're able to provide them as much feedback as they provide you. So I think when you talk about building relationships and building trust, it's just like any stakeholder engagement. It's about coming to the table with something that's generally useful for everyone on the team, coming with insights that are novel or that are grounded in previous experiences or data that you might have access to that they haven't seen before. And so I think it's really about slowly building up those layers of trust that it takes with any team. So I think too often in tech companies, particularly when you get to larger tech companies, things get pretty siloed. It's a big organization. It can be
Yes.
really difficult to navigate. It takes a lot of work. Like if you're at a startup, it might be different because you're all sitting in the same room and, you can yell over your monitor to, the dev team who's sitting right there. But when you're working in a geographically dispersed organization or something that is of massive scale, it can become a little transactional. And I find that moving beyond that is what's super critical. So I mentioned earlier that coming to the table with some kind of valuable information and not just being, a service center, if you will. Like you want to be seen as a peer in terms of being a stakeholder. So one of the best ways to do that is helping shape the product vision or helping shape roadmap or launch timelines or something like that, which we can get into a little bit later. But it's about making sure they see you as that peer, that equal stakeholder, not, just the people who write the blogs. Like that's the thing that I probably hate most about marketing is when they just see it as well, you guys do go to market and they just mean
Yeah.
everything after shipping the product. You guys figure that out. We don't care. Just write a good blog post and we'll be done. But in this day and age, that doesn't work. So I think having some credibility when you come to your stakeholders is hugely important. So like I said, there's like the data or let me give you something, kind of that transactional way of like getting in. But then when you move beyond that, it's about also one, just building collegial relationships is always good. But two, I think one of the ways to do that in a time when everyone's really busy is doing enough of your homework. Like I work in cloud products, work on the cutting edge of AI, like everyone's probably trying to be these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think making sure you're credible when you go into those conversations with enough information to be dangerous about how the product works, what the roadmap might actually look like. So having empathy to what a developer team is trying to do in terms of trade-offs. So the product teams, the product managers are trying to, do all this roadmap prioritization and do these feature trade-off discussions and working with the eng teams on costing and things like that. If you understand that part of the value chain and what some of the trade-offs are that they're making, you can be a better partner again. Like, just doing some basic Google searches or using your LLM of choice to understand what the technology is actually doing, using some of the lingo that the product teams are using to make sure you're contributing back to the conversation and you're not just waiting for them to throw something over the fence and then you say, okay, done. Because in a healthy organization, product marketing should be providing regular feedback to the product teams
Yes.
about what the product capabilities are that we need, what constraints there might be on the go-to-market side in terms of pricing and packaging and all kinds of things like that. And it depends on how your organization is set up, where some of those functions live, like the pricing and packaging capabilities. But you as a marketer really have a say. You might not own, but you should be a strong stakeholder in the entire value chain. And I think that's a major failure of some organizations where they don't, where the product marketing team doesn't really lean into that. So I
Yeah.
think building those relationships foundationally is what takes you to that next level.
Yeah. No, that's very well said, Wes. I think it's interesting how you put that at the very beginning about it's like any relationship, there needs to be kind of this give and take and kind of this kind of mutuality of, all right, I'm providing, one side of the relationship is providing something, but they also need to be given something. And it can be very easy for the product marketing team to just fall into the trap of, all right, yes, like you said, like products throwing this over the fence, we'll just, take it out to market. But you, as a product marketer, have so much more value when you bring insights to the product team as a partner to help them develop the product, help them understand what's working well or not working well in some cases with the product, which could be even more helpful, and how that can influence what happens in the roadmap, what happens in the future go to market motions. So, yeah, you're right. It's a kind of a common sense principle of any relationship, any stakeholder you want to bring to the table as much as you're receiving. But with this particular relationship, product marketing and product, you do need to bring those insights that are key to them. And so I think of it as product is kind of this inside out approach. They're building a product. They have their own way of building this particular product, and they want to take it out to the market. But you, as a product marketer, are kind of this outside in approach, where at least in this particular relationship, where your value comes from understanding the market itself, whether that's the competition, the analysts, the just general domain. If you're able to bring that outside in perspective to the product team, that's where you can counterbalance and say, hey, you know what? Competitor X, Y, and Z are doing this, but we're not. Why is that? Maybe we should, or maybe we shouldn't. Those are the things that do help bring some of that mutuality to that relationship, like you said. So I think that's a great foundation for that relationship with product, as you said, just kind of bring that mutuality. And by the way, everyone, Wes says he's on the cutting edge of technology for AI, and yes, a lot of people want to say that, but something that we didn't get into in his intro is that he's working on Google Workspace right now, and there has been a recent release with Gemini being part of that, and so that's clearly a really important launch that's happened recently, and his relationship with the product team is very key on that. So, Wes, thank you for that. That's such a great foundation to what we're talking about today. So, to continue that thought, when we're talking about bringing that outside in approach, we want to bring, as product marketers, insights and market feedback to the product development process, as we've talked about. How do you do that in your experience, and how receptive are the product teams to that input?
That's a great question. I think that different organizations, I've been a part of a couple of successful technology companies.
Yes.
But they're huge, right? So like every organization is going to do it a little bit differently. The organizations I've been a part of are obviously very large and have a lot of specialized resources to do some of these things. So I know that in a smaller organization, a startup, a lot of this is actually going to be completely owned by maybe one singular PMM.
Mm-hmm.
But at these bigger organizations, we have the luxury of having teams that specialize in things like market research.
Yes.
So my job is a little bit less to be the person that's, conducting every last nuanced bit of the research sourcing the research vendor and all of that, and more the type of person who says, okay, we can use external insights in this instance, or we have existing insights in this particular area of, thinking about different personas in this segment, or thinking about the types of workflows that are particularly valuable in this industry. So again, we have the benefit of that. In a smaller organization, you have to be a little bit more guerrilla. But I think bringing those insights in to the discussions with the product team, again, it's just another arrow in your quiver to get a seat at the table and have a broader discussion about what the product should be, what's our product market fit, what's our differentiation. And I think too often, like, a product team might come to you and say, we need insights on XYZ. Seems like a marketing thing. Go figure it out. But I think it goes back to, being grounded in kind of some first principles of, like, no, what is the problem we're trying to solve? What are the insights that we really need? Because you're just telling me to go do something. I want to be an equal thought partner. But again, as you alluded to early on, like, marketing's always going to have this somewhat unique perspective relative to a product team that's going to be very deep and kind of the technical workings of something, and they have very strong opinions about what the solution should be. And I think it's marketing's job is to always be the sense check, right? Like, let's go back to what's the problem we're really trying to solve, whether that's with, determining between two trade-offs in the product roadmap, determining how those trade-offs are going to impact go-to-market, which I know this is the topic today, is to really focus on the product relationships. But the thing that I think is always important with those relationships is making the other half of the value chain very clear to the product team. So when they're building something, it's about the go-to-market, about the product market fit. Like, all of those pieces fit together. And I think the meta thing and the meta value you bring is left to right visibility. And whether that's left to right visibility about that value chain that I'm talking about, or one other thing that I'd like to mention is, in all the organizations I've been a part of, the product marketer almost always has a one-to-many relationship with product teams.
Yes.
There's always a bigger product team. There's always a bigger GTM team than the product marketing team. So we're this small but mighty node in that value chain. And I think even when working with individual product managers or engineering managers, it's important that you're also providing a little bit of the left to right visibility across their own org, which sounds crazy, but sometimes you can actually be the person that brings information from one team to another. You can be the one saying, okay, I heard the roadmap from this team is XYZ and yours is ABC, and the timing's not lining up. But if we align all of these things, it makes a much bigger story in terms of PR, AR that you mentioned. It makes more potential for earned media if you have a big splash and all of those types of things. So again, it's you having a foundation in the value chain of how the product value is delivered and how the net new product value from the product teams is aligning with that. And again, it could even be sister partner teams that are working on the same types of solutions that you're trying to help them with greater visibility.
Yeah. And I like how you put that. It's, helping the product team also not just understand the market insights and market trends, but also how does the rest of the marketing work in conjunction with product. You are that single interface, ideally, from marketing to the product team. So you help them understand what's going on with the demand generation motions. You help them to understand what's going on with some of the campaigns that are happening or events, or in some of the, business development. You're hopefully able to kind of package that all in a way to help them understand at a high level, this is how we marketing can take the content that we're trying to develop to promote this particular product and get it distributed out to the prospects and potential customers. So yeah, I think that's great how you also mentioned that. It's like, it's not just about like the product directly, what's happening with the competition in the market, but it's also bringing in, how does the rest of marketing play within product marketing and how can you be that kind of single interface for product. So I think that's great. And then also you mentioned too about being able to have that influence on the product roadmap, whether that's directly on the product features and capabilities itself, or simply aligning with the rest of other launches that could be happening with other teams and other products that might be aligned but might be slightly separate. Because to your point, on average, I think there's like a 1 to 3 PMM to PM ratio. It's like in an ideal situation. So most places you'll have another 1 to 7 or 1 to 10. So yes, other teams are definitely more stacked up than product marketing, but that's where you do need to be that kind of single interface for product, and especially when helping bring insights that can help develop the product roadmap. Which leads me to my next question. So when you have that insight from the market, when you have that insight from what are your other capabilities from growth marketing and other parts of the marketing org, how does that help you as a product marketer help shape or influence the product roadmap?
I think it's very easy in terms of concept, but it's very difficult in terms of execution. Now, the concept that I would say is potentially easy to understand, at least, is make the product teams understand why it's in their best interest to do something. So, like you're saying, okay, we have all of this information about why sequencing releases in a certain way, or packaging releases, or packaging product value in certain SKUs, or any of those types of things lead to the outcomes we're trying to drive as a business. But when you look at like the individual PM level, or the small sub team within a much larger organization, they're going to say, well, I'm building the most universally useful tool
Yeah.
in the whole product stack, and everyone should use it, and it should be included in every SKU, and it should be released immediately. And you're like, you're adding like one button.
Yeah.
Not that, like
Yes.
it's not that big of a thing. We need to figure out how to lump this together with other product values so you get the usage you want. If your goal is to drive usage of a product, like, then you have those conversations. If it's to drive revenue, again, marketing has a huge toolkit. It depends on how your organization is structured. If like pricing and monetization is part of the marketing org, or co-owned, or it's part of the product org, either way, you should be influencing that. So when you think about how it fits in like a SKU placemat or something like that, you actually have quantitative data, hopefully, or at least historical insights, and some idea of like, okay, is this a premium product that has like a really high price and low quantity, or this is like a very ubiquitous thing and it should be in every SKU. Like, you should always have opinions of that, so you can go back and work with the product teams, because they're, going to have their own strong opinions.
Yes.
And it's important for you to feel like an owner of the business. You are one of the stakeholders in the business. You are the, CMO, CRO, whatever,
Right.
of your part of the business unit. So like, again, I work at Google. There's 100,000 plus people that work here. But to be as effective as I can be, I have to feel ownership over my space.
Yes.
And if there's adjacent spaces that are going to impact my space, I should feel empowered to at least ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
not a super senior VP, and I'm not going to be able to say no to everything, but I'm going to be able to raise flags to my leadership. I'm going to be able to have difficult conversations with my product team, and maybe even other product teams. But again, when I go back to the very beginning of like having solid, just like human-based relationships, like, knowing that, Susie's daughter's in the, high school state championships for soccer or something, like
Right.
some
Right.
of those simple things. But then equally, it's knowing that Susie's dev team has been really struggling because there's an update to the latest LLM and blah, blah, blah. Like, from a technical perspective, knowing that they refactored a bunch of the APIs on the back end, and they had to do a bunch of extra eng work to get some outcome. Like, having empathy on both ends of that and being able to speak to them and understand at a technical level will let you go back and have those hard conversations with the business insights so you truly can kind of execute on that ownership mentality.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's great. To your point about those human relationships, yes, that's going to be fundamental to all of this because that matters.
Mm-hmm.
That matters if you take an interest in that person, and that definitely puts their guard down and opens up and deepens trust. So I think that's absolutely a key part of that. And then you bring in the technical pieces, the market insights, and those pieces of information that they will find useful. And I
It,
and
it
gonna
lets you, it takes away from it being personal where they're like, oh, you're getting in my way just because, oh, you don't want to do something, or
yes,
oh, your opinion's different, but it's no better than mine. When you really, you can kind of bring strong assertions that are well founded in data, but then also have a trusting human relationship. They know you're not trying to pull something over on them. They know you're
yes,
not trying to like work around them in some way. So it's a combination of all those factors that I think really help you execute well as a marketer.
yeah. And that's absolutely true. I think you kind of put that well. It's like their ability to trust you that you're not pulling one over on them. So that actually is a great segue into our last deep dive question is when there is friction, when there is a disagreement, which inevitably will happen, how do you handle that with your product partners?
I go right to their boss. No.
Oh, so that's how you gain trust. I
Yeah,
see.
no. No, that's the worst thing you could do. I think sometimes it's just about spending enough time. Like we're all in meetings, a million meetings a day. There's, all the emails and chats and all of that coming through hot. But sometimes if you're truly having issues with alignment, you just say, can we have like an hour where we can sit down and kind of map all of this out? We're going to come in with a little bit of data. We'll do some pre-reads together where you show me what you're seeing, I show you what I'm seeing, and then we can do a whiteboarding session and kind of like figure out where our gaps are. I think whenever those issues of alignment are present, it can oftentimes just be spending the time. I think the other thing that I've learned the hard way over time is picking your battles. I know it's
Yes.
but sometimes it's easier to just, if they want to ship something and they really think you should write a blog for it, not that blogs are even really effective anymore, but that's a whole nother discussion. You just do it because it's an hour. It'll, again, save the relationship. It's just like a marriage or something. Sometimes you're like, I don't want to, I did this last night. It's your turn to do the dishes,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
sometimes you just say like, not worth it. I'll just do the dishes again. You had a long day. I know there's like other things going on and your work is stressful. So I'm just going to, do this today. And as long as it's not like an existential question for the business, then like some of the give and take is totally
Yes.
fine. If it is a more existential question, that's where I think you sit down. Maybe sometimes you bring in your marriage counselor or therapist. So you bring in a third party, you bring in
Yeah,
someone to kind of arbitrate. I think that if you have the relationships built in a foundation of trust, mutual respect for kind of the capabilities that you're all bringing to the table, it makes all of those things much easier. You're always going to have friction points and disagreements, but if you do all of the legwork I was talking about at the beginning, then these pain points become less acute and potentially less problematic because, again, you can have those open conversations and you can just ask for a little more time to sit down and hash something out.
absolutely. Yeah, and I like how you put that. So two things really. It's spending the time with the person, and yes, we get all the different types of ways to communicate with people, whether it's email or chat, and that can be less effective sometimes. But this is your most important relationship in the workplace, and so yeah, you do need to spend that time, whether it's like spending an hour or so with that person to kind of communicate. This is what I mean by this, and this is how I feel about it. This is the insight that I have that might be different than what you have. And then yes, and then you're right. You do have to pick your battles. You're not going to win every time. If you
Right.
do win every time, then you're either this prodigy or uh, you end up barreling over people, and they don't you trust you, as much. They don't value your relationship because you're not willing to listen to what they say, because you may even be right, but if you're not willing to listen to the other side, then that can cause a strain in the relationship. So you're totally right. Sometimes you got to pick your battles. Sometimes there are certain things that are worth dying on a hill for, and there are certain things that it's not worth it. So you need to save your ammo. So
100%. And there's even one more thing, one more outcome that would be probably even worse than either of those, which is they say yes to your face and then they go do whatever they want.
exactly.
Like
Exactly.
that's the worst, is when you have a complete breakdown in that trusting relationship and you're just no longer functioning and getting the information across the organization that you need. And that is, to me, one of the probably greatest pillars of strength of a good product marketer, is being a great source of information and really consolidating and then redistributing information across the org.
Yes.
So if you start to lose that, then your value of a product marketer goes from strategic insights to the business to the people who write the blog.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
product marketer, I think, actually wants, well, maybe I shouldn't speak for everyone. Most product marketers want to have a more holistic portfolio than just, some of the late stage outbound.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely agree with you on that. And I think you're right on that third point about if they will say yes to your face, but then not actually do it. And so then you don't trust them, they don't trust you, and then that just messes the relationship up completely. So well, this has been great, Wes. Thank you so much. You've given us a lot to think about our as product marketers, our relationship with the product team. So now, before we wrap up, I want to end with my traditional rapid fire round.
Yes.
So I'm going to go through our standard 5 questions, and then what comes to your mind, definitely let us know. We love your opinion on these. So
Cool.
ready for it?
Sure.
Awesome. All right. So first question, what's your favorite marketing tool?
Golly, I'd say it's a hard one between chat, again, being able to just know what's going on in the organization, being able to quickly glean information and figure out what's going on. So like, it sounds silly. It's not really a marketing tool, but like getting information across the organization. So I'd say chat, and I'm going to cheat and do a second one and just say your, LLM based chat app of your choice. Like Gemini's a good one. I work with it a
Yes.
lot. I kind of play with them all, ChatGPT and Claude as well, just to know what's going on with different solutions in the market. But what I said earlier around being dangerous enough in terms of technical topics, like it used to just be Google search, right? You're like, I heard this acronym in a meeting and the product teams kept repeating it. I have no idea what the heck it means. Google it. Or I need to know, like, what are the latest way or like best ways the industry is finding to do model tuning or something like that, so you can be a part of a discussion. Like, I'm not a ML PhD. Like, I
Yes.
don't have time to read all the like academic papers coming out, but getting smart enough quickly to be a part of the conversation, I think, is really important. So those 2 data sources, I'm going to cheat and say those are my favorite tools.
Totally. Well, and as being part of the product marketing team for Google Workspace, of course, chat's going to be one of your.
Well, of course.
Yes. So, but you're okay. You're allowed to be biased. So,
Yeah, I'm sitting in the office that they paid for, so I got
yes,
it.
exactly. Second question is, what do you think the most underrated skill is in product?
The most underrated skill in product marketing, I'd say I don't know if it's a skill, but just like having a sense of humor.
It's a skill. It's a skill.
Yeah, like I think being able to come into situations and not take things like we talked about, it's all this relationship based stuff, and working with product teams, it's all relationship based. So I think being able to come into a situation where you can bring some levity to an otherwise stressful situation, or you can reflect on some tough conversation and have a good sense of humor about some of the crazy things one of the engineers or go-to-market people said to you. Like, I think having that mentality is really beneficial.
I couldn't agree with you more. Yes, it is a skill. It's very important, because if you're just straight business, that can definitely be boring. Like, yes, you can bring good information, good insights and capabilities to a project and to a team, but humor just makes it enjoyable. We're
100%.
people, you want to enjoy what you do, and not that everything's going to be rainbows and puppies at work, but the closer you can get to that with humor, all that much the better. So
Absolutely.
I think that's definitely good advice. Okay, third question. What's the biggest mistake to avoid in product marketing?
That one's probably much easier, and I'd say working in a silo,
Huh.
whether that's a silo from your team, silo from your manager, silo from the product
Mm-hmm.
team,
Yeah.
your product, like a silo that's your product area versus others in the business. Like, again, your job, in addition to some of the more tactical things, is to be a node of information so you can help distill what matters, whether that's distilling what matters in messaging, distilling what the most important factors are going to be in a go to market, distilling like the work back associated with some of those more executional components. And so I think the greatest failures or stumbles I've had in my own career are when I would just take an assignment from my manager, think that I had to go off into some little cave and come back with a 100% perfect finished product at the end of it without getting any input from anyone else in the business, whether it's product teams, my leadership, my peers. And so to me, the greatest mistake you can make is like, again, these sound cliche, but it's not asking questions, not saying, okay, let me put an outline on paper real quick and get a sense check from the rest of my team. It's pretty kind of foundational things that make you good in any job. But I think, particularly because of the dynamic of the small but mighty product marketing teams in most of these organizations, you really have to get as much leverage out of your time as you possibly can. And so it's about tightening feedback loops. It's about getting quick cycles of information input into whatever output you're trying to generate. Like, do things fast, don't think they need to be complete, get ideas on paper, and make sure that the necessary stakeholders quickly get that information so you can move forward together very quickly.
Totally. I could not agree with you more about the asking questions piece. I like there's a proverb about he who asks is a fool for 5 minutes, but he who doesn't ask is a fool forever.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah, it's important to get over your pride and just say, you know what, I don't know this thing. I got questions, and ask. And that could be asking your manager, it could be asking the product team, it could be asking peers, it could be asking ChatGPT, so or get Gemini.
There you
Uh,
go.
but yes, it's a really key thing to miss. So I would agree with you on that. That's one of the biggest mistakes you should avoid. So all right, and our last question, rapid fire question is what's one actually no, there are two more. The second to last one is what's one thing you wish you knew when you started product marketing?
I have a long story for another pod if I ever come back. Is like, how did I get into product marketing? Because
Uh-huh.
not something I like chose really. I kind of fell backwards into it. But again, that's a longer story. There was a list miles long of things I didn't know coming in to product marketing that I could share. But I think the thing that I didn't understand coming into product marketing more than anything was how much of a strategic impact you can have on the business as a whole as a product marketer. So you think, oh, it's just the product teams, or maybe it's the sales teams that are super effective at selling the product. But again, you're the linchpin of how both of those huge sides and hugely important sides of the business actually execute. So you are a small but mighty node, again, in this larger organization, and having the confidence and the understanding that you are one of those critical stakeholders and you're not just taking orders from other people, but you're actually providing insights and feedback into how the organization as a whole is executing, what the health of all of that is, whether you're overweight or underweight on certain components of that value chain. I think even having some of the, long-term forward-looking like strategic insights of where to play and how to win in the market, what the competition is doing. Like we think about all of those things from, an academic perspective is marketing ownership, but in the way that most tech companies operate, sometimes product teams take a lot of that. And I think to be really effective in product marketing, you have to show up at those tables. You have to say, why are we doing it this way? Our competition has done this. We either need a different approach or we need to accelerate something to get ahead of them. Like you are coming to the table as a real strategic partner, and you're not just the person who puts up the website and writes the blog. Like that's I don't want to call it easy, but those are the more tactical decisions that come down the road. But like the big high level decisions that will impact what you do on those further down the road initiatives are items of concern for you as a product marketer. And I think having that insight is something that really changed my perspective on product marketing.
Definitely. That's great. That's definitely good to hear, especially as you kind of think about, what is that strategic value you can provide. And so if you're able to do that with other teams, especially obviously with product, that really kind of accelerates your capabilities. So, all right, Now this is actually the last question.
All right.
Favorite podcast?
Favorite podcast? Golly, I have so many. I listen to Decoder a lot. I listen to some political podcasts, which I won't get into here. You're going to make me pick one.
Well, you already let's go with the Decoder one.
Decoder. Fine, we can go with Decoder.
And why do you win?
I'd say it's probably a really close one between Decoder and Hard Fork. Like, I really like how they both cover tech news. I think they're always at the forefront of kind of what's going on. And I find it helpful, again, just like I said, using ChatGPT or something like that. Like having insights into what's going on in the industry is hugely important. So we'll go with Decoder or Hard Fork.
Sounds good.
You probably hear a lot of that. But
yeah. No, it's all good. This is the first time I've heard about Decoder, so I'll have to check that out. Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Wes, for playing along. I really appreciate your insights and thanks for sharing your experience. It's definitely been great to have you on the show.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Really enjoyed it. And if you have any other topics, I'm more than happy to come back and chat some more.
Terrific. And then to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Porter's Product Marketing Podcast. If you find this episode valuable, please subscribe, leave a review, share it with your network. We'll be back soon with more insights to help you excel in product marketing. Until next time, keep innovating and driving impact.